1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. Today's guest is a field training officer. He's a K9 handler. He is a TFO, the Homeland Security, an active shooter instructor, and has been a cop for an extremely long period of time. He's got a bunch of critical incidents underneath his belt. This is a must-listen to episode. I think maybe 4 officer-involved shootings. Today's guest is Pat Dolan. So Woodson, you're involved in your first critical incident in Woodson. How early on was that in your career?
3 months.
3 months? Seriously?
Yeah. So it was, I got there in November, February.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow, man.
Yep.
You got a black cloud following you, dude.
I guess. Just deal with what's in front of me.
Yeah.
No, I was there 3 months. I was still feeling my way out. I didn't really know, when you switch a department, and you don't know anybody going in, they don't know you. Can we trust him? Can I trust them? So we were feeling, everybody was kind of feeling each other out. And it was a weird deal. We had been, I was on midnights. We rotated every 2 months.
That's a tough rotation.
Which was brutal. But yeah, it was a midnight. And there was nothing in Woodson open at night. So you had to go, at the time, pre-COVID, when everything was open overnight. Mm-hmm. Schnucks over in Overland off Page.
Yeah, you get your little $5.
Right, that's right. So I was hungry. So I went to the corporal. It was just me and him working. The sergeant was off that night because he was in some training. And I called the corporal. I said, hey, I'm going to run over to Overland to Schnucks to get something to eat real quick. Do you want anything? And he's like, nah, I'm good. I'll watch the city. Go ahead and go. So I shoot down Woodson Road, and I make the left onto Page, and then the right into Schnucks parking lot, and I go in, and I get whatever I got, and I pay for it, and I'm coming out, and as I'm walking out, the corporal's walking in. And I said, what are you doing here? He goes, well, I changed my mind. I go, who's watching the city? He goes, nobody. I go, well, that's a problem. We can't leave the city unattended. And I was young. I was like, we don't get to leave the city. And he's like, it'll be fine. So no sooner I walk out, and we had Crown Vics at the time. So I literally put the key in the door and turn it. And one of the St. John officers says he had a vehicle failing to yield, turning northbound on a Woodson Road. And coming from where he was coming from, it was about 500 feet, and they were in our venue. And I was like, oh, perfect. They're in our town, and we're not there.
Yeah.
So I've never driven a Crown Vic so fast.
It's the best police vehicle ever made.
Till you get going over 100, and it gets real sketchy, like you're driving a Cloud.
Yeah.
And so it was to the floor down Woodson Road, and car crashed at Woodson and Natural Bridge and went up in flames. So I pulled up. I was, second or third on scene, and grabbed a fire extinguisher. And we were just trying to maintain the fire until fire could get there. We knew we weren't going to be able to put it out. And we had one girl had gotten out on her own. I don't recall her having any injuries. There was a passerby that had stopped to pick her up. It was cold. It was February. And stopped, put her in their car, and then there was a guy in the front seat and a girl in the back seat that was just screaming. It had ripped the whole front end of the car off. He had basically tried to make a right turn where the road ended. He hit the embankment, went airborne, hit a lamppost, and ripped the whole front end of the car off. And it was a fireball. It was like a 2000s Cadillac V8 front wheel drive. It was a big heavy car, 2-door car, and so it threw the driver into the passenger seat. So when I walked up to the driver's side window, his legs were across the center console, but his back was up against the passenger door. So he was actually facing me, but he was in the passenger seat, and he was out. I don't know if he was dead or just unconscious from the impact or what. And then the woman in the back seat. And I looked at him, and I called him by his brother's name. I had dealt with his brother like 2 weeks prior. We dealt with both of them quite a bit. And I called him by the wrong name, and then I realized who it was. And like a week prior, this subject and I had got into a knockdown, drag-out fight in his mom's living room, and every piece of furniture was broken in his mom's living room from this fight. So he had pending resisting and assault on LEO charges, and he had been out of prison for a short period of time, and big drug addict. Like, just he had all the things.
Yeah.
So at that point, we weren't trying to arrest him. It was a rescue at that point. And so he started kind of moaning. He had that weird moan. It wasn't like that death gurgle. It was just that, like, he was coming to. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Hey, man, wake up. We got to get you out of the car." The doors were pinned shut. We couldn't get anything out. The window was broken, but I couldn't get the doors open. And he woke up, and it was that weird, like, 1,000-yard stare. And I was standing in the opening of the driver's door, and he didn't say anything. He looked right at me, and he pulled up a gun, and everything slowed down. It was real slow.
Oh, yeah.
It was like slow motion, but fast forward all at the same time. It was very, very odd. And you could hear me say on some of the audio that I've got a gun, and commands were given: drop the gun, drop the gun. The St. John officer that had started this at that point had stepped around me and into the window opening, and I had kind of started to backpedal towards the back of the car. And I don't know, I still talk to this officer, and he's a great guy. And I said, "Why did you step in front of the gun?" And he's like, "I don't know. But this subject got 1 round off. Shot him in the bottom of his vest. It was a judge, and he had a .410 in the chamber."
That's what was shot at me.
Fortunately, it's a nasty gun, but fortunately it was the .410, not a .45 long, because from where he was, it would have hurt him bad. Especially if it had caught just below the vest, it would have been a gut shot. But it didn't. It all hit him high enough and hit him in the vest. And so then he got 1 round off, and then we volleyed. There was 41 rounds fired back into the car.
Holy cow.
Between 6 of us. So then we backed off the car. I got out.
What happened to the rear passenger?
So we backed off, and I said, everybody hold on it. We had a couple guys show up, and I said, get long guns and just hold on the car. Just do it from cover. We don't know if he'd hunkered down. We didn't really know if we hit him at that point. So we were just going to just wait him out. If he was still alive, he was either going to burn in the car, or he was going to get himself out. The female in the back, car went up completely in flames. She self-extricated. When she came out of the back, she climbed out the driver's window, and her bottom half was on fire.
Oh shit.
Yeah, she was completely on fire. Her will to live was incredible. I mean, they were all high on meth. And she had some pretty significant injuries, like broken pelvis, broken parts of her back were broken, just from, the impact. So
amazing what you can will your body to do.
yeah. So then that was a rescue. So a couple of St. Louis County guys showed up and they had a shield and they approached and basically drug her out of the way and drug her to the ambulance. But then rounds started going off in the car, and so the car just went up. We didn't have a choice. We just let it burn. It was, at that point, we were going to risk going back up to the car.
Mm-hmm.
So it more or less, from what I remember, burned itself out. And then St. Louis County Crimes Against Persons came out to process the scene. That was weird.
You said there were 6 people that shot back, or 4?
6.
Yeah.
So because it was a rescue, we put out an aid call, vehicle on fire with people entrapped. And so we had, over there, all the small munis. We had, the airport police showed up, Bell Ridge, Edmondson.
Was the airport police still St. Louis Metro?
I think they're still governed by them. It was at the time. I don't know if it still is.
I think it is. I'm not sure, though.
But, yeah, so there was 6 of us that shot from various positions around the car. Everybody was pretty good. Like, it was, tactically speaking, it was probably a disaster if you were to go back and critique it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no crossfire type thing. And everybody was shooting down into the car. And the girl in the back seat didn't take a single round. So everybody was focused on where he was at.
Yeah.
So they, St. Louis County Crimes Against shows up, and they, that was a weird feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's the county. Are they going to hang us muni guys out to dry? How's this going to go? And those guys were phenomenal. I have nothing but good things to say about those guys. It's all a different group down there now, but those guys were great. I did a walk through the scene. They videoed everything.
That night?
Yeah, just a walkthrough. No statement, just like, here's where I positioned, here's what I did, here's where I was at, here's where I was at when the rounds went off.
Practically like a public safety statement.
They just, I guess, I don't know really what they did with that information, but I think they were just trying to gather, like, put the scene together. But they weren't using any of that as our official statements. And then, we did a couple sleep cycles, and then we were going to go down and give our official statement.
And what year was this?
This was 13.
I think I remember this call.
Or this would have been 14. This was February of 14.
I think I remember this.
Because this is the same year as Mike Brown.
Yeah.
Because Mike Brown was August of that same year. We did a quick walk through each one of us, and then my command staff shows up, and it was very, like, they asked me, how many rounds did you fire? I don't know.
I have no clue.
I had no idea. And they said, well, drop your mag and count your rounds. And I had fired 7 times. And we ran SIGs, and we ran 357s. So we were the only ones that had a 357 over there. One of the guys from one of the other agencies had a 45, and everybody else was 40s. So it was real easy to determine rounds when it came to the 45 and the 357.
357, you said it was a 357 SIG semi-auto?
Yeah.
What was it? What was the name of it?
It was like a 229 or 22, whatever the two. I don't remember what the full frame was, but yeah, that's what we carried over there. So it was a 40 cal. The way it was always explained to me, I'm not a gun guy, but it was a 40 cal shell necked down to a 9mm round, that a projectile. That's the way it's always been explained to me.
Okay, because we had 229s, but they're 40s. Yeah.
So it's a hot round. It was a pretty nasty round. Expensive, but it was a good round. We go through that, and I had to explain. I caught paper on it, actually.
From the shooting?
Yeah.
What?
So I had explained why my response time was slow getting there while I was coming from out of venue.
Yeah.
And I tried my best not to hang the corporal out to dry, and he hung us both out to dry. So I caught a write-up for leaving the city unattended. and then I got good paper on it later on. But it was very odd. I had a sergeant there that was one of the best guys I've ever worked for. He's like, how do you get reprimanded and get an award all at the same time? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But
It's 21st century policing right there.
yeah. So he, it was just weird. I screwed up a lot in that whole thing from not knowing, my wife is a retired fire captain and she's now a ICU nurse. So she was sent to me on purpose, to put up with all this.
Mm-hmm.
So she's been through a lot professionally and personally, and she can pretty much take anything that I throw at her. But I failed with the way that I communicated how I'd been in a shooting, because I didn't communicate it. I think I sent a text at some point. She was at home sleeping, but her best friend had called her and said, hey, there's a shooting in Woodson. Have you talked to Pat? And then she got a text. I was like, hey, I was in a shooting. I'm okay. I'll call you when I can. And that wasn't the best way to approach that. I should have made.
Probably not.
I should have picked up the phone. I got in a little bit of trouble over that. But I didn't know at the time, nobody told me if I could talk to her or I couldn't talk to her. I was just kind of like, I got to let her know.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to not get in trouble from a legal standpoint
Mm-hmm.
for communicating anything. And then I didn't really get days off. It was weird. It was like the first day of our days on when we worked 12s. And or it might have been, I don't remember what it was, but the chief brought me in and he goes, you got to come back in for your shift tonight. And, but you can't leave the station. You just got to sit in the station. And I said, well, what do you
Why
want
do
me
you have to be there then?
Well, yeah, I don't know. And he's like, well, that's just the way we're going to do it, because I'm not really sure what else to do right now. Okay. So I came in and sat in the station, and word got around to all the munis over there that, it felt like a punishment, like I did something wrong. So every muni over there, all the guys grabbed pizza and, stuff to drink, and everybody just came to the Woodson station, and we all sat in the station all night, other than when they had to go run a call. Everybody just hung out. And I didn't know these guys. I'd been there 3 months, so I wasn't really,
Yeah.
they didn't have to do anything for me.
Was this the night after your shooting?
It was the night after or the night after that. I don't remember.
What was the night of your shooting like? Like when you got off of work and went home?
So I stayed on scene for a long time. I was kind of on my own on the scene. I got pulled into the command vehicle because all of our commanders came out, and I was sitting in the back of a Tahoe, chief's driving, the captain's in the front seat, the lieutenant's in the next seat, and then I'm in the middle, and then there's another lieutenant from our bureau, and I'm like,
That's interesting.
yeah, this is and they're firing questions at me, and I was like, I don't know if I can really talk about this right now. So it went okay. They
What?
Yeah, it was weird.
What do you mean they fire a question like, what did you do? Why did you do it?
Yeah,
Type stuff?
yeah.
And they're just questioning you in their car.
Yeah, explain it.
What in the
It was-
world?
Lack of experience on their end. I mean, I don't know the last time they had a shooting prior to that. They had
I get it, man, but
they had an officer get shot.
common
on the line
sense
of
should
duty.
prevail.
Well,
Let's not
Yeah.
inundate this guy who just went through something traumatic and ask him a bunch of questions that could
Yes.
affect the rest of his life
No,
in
I
the
agree.
back of a Tahoe.
but that's what I was faced with. And so they had one of the guys bring me down a different gun. They took my gun to St. Louis County. And then this was at 2 a.m. Shift was, I think, 6 to 6. And so I went back to the station shortly after that and at no point, I mean, other than the guys on scene, everybody's like, "Hey, everybody good? Anybody hit? Anybody, that type of everybody okay?"
Nobody "Hey, are you actually mentally
not until
okay?"
I got back to the station did the one sergeant come up and say, "Hey, man, are you good?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I think so. Like, I don't know yet. Like, it's still pretty fresh." And he's like, "You did everything right. Like, don't sweat any of this. You did your job. All the good guys are going home." He goes, "That's the way it's supposed to go." And he said, "This guy made this choice, not you." Okay. And this was a pretty rough street cop, very well respected guy that would go to bat for anybody, for anything. So it meant a lot coming from him that he was like, "No, man, you're good. You did what you had to do." So then I think I left the station at like 10 after being there from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. and I drove home. And I got home, and at some point I had talked to my wife in between, and I don't really remember what the conversation was. It was all kind of a blur. I had that weird brain fog, like, this happened. My brain is just like in overdrive.
Trying to wrap your head around what really just happened and what the implications may be.
Yeah, I wasn't ever really worried. Like, on the scene, I was like, I know I saw a gun. I know I saw a gun. And then when they went in and did the crime scene side of things on the car, I was like, oh God, I hope they find a gun. I hope they find a gun. I saw a gun. I know it's there. He got shot. I know it's there.
But your brain kind of does weird, irrational things like that.
Yeah, so I was like, man, I hope the gun's in there. Well, then they found it, which I knew was there all along because this officer had been shot with it. So, but it was one of those things like, oh man, if they don't find a gun,
I may be in big
how
trouble.
How are we going to justify this? Like, so it all ended the way it was supposed to end. They transported him, and he had, I don't know how many rounds struck him. They said that they couldn't trace the soft tissue rounds because he had burned up in the car. So he was dead before the car burned up. That's the only thing we knew for sure, because when they did the autopsy, he didn't have any soot in his lungs. So we knew that his actions were a direct result of his own death. He didn't die because he burned up in a fire. He died because he shot at the police.
Yeah.
Which, you don't ever go to work, at least I hope, and nobody goes to work and says, today's the day I'm going to go out and I'm going to get into a shooting with somebody and I'm going to shoot somebody. And if that's your mindset, then you need to get out of police work.
Please leave. We don't need you. We don't want you.
But there was that kind of like, I kind of want him to know that
we won.
He didn't beat us, we beat him.
Yeah.
Kind of, I mean, it's there's not really a good way to put it.
Well, there's a competitive nature there. It's like, it is. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I didn't want him to think that he got one over on us.
Yeah, and like everything that you've trained for, you want to know in your head that you did, like, that you did it. You know what I mean? It's like you're almost competing with yourself. Like, did I do the things I thought that I was going to do?
Yeah.
Did I win when everything was on the line? Did I win?
Yeah, you don't really know what's going to happen until you're put in that position. Yeah. You know how you're going to perform.
Yeah. You can, and that's the crazy thing is you hear guys say, well, I do this, I do that, I do this, and I do that. You really don't know till you're there, man.
Right.
And when you're there, and in my case and in your case, I think we did what we were supposed to, but it was almost like something clicked off, and I just resorted back to some other part of me that I didn't really know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't. I made a conscious decision. I remember that, but it was like everything else from that conscious decision was like it was just all the range days. It was like you just switch over into this other part of you that almost is subconscious that you've been drilling into your brain for forever, and you do your thing, and then everything's done, and then it's back to normal again.
Yeah, and I was a terrible shooter till things were on the line. Like, I was that guy that couldn't hit the paper until
you're shooting a 229, dude. That's a hard gun to shoot. And
it's a double single.
Oh,
so yeah. Until it mattered, that's when I came through. So, But yeah, so I came in the next day or the day after, whatever it was, and I sat in the station with all the guys in the adjoining munis, and everybody just sat around and hung out, and that was a support group for me.
Yeah, your first peer-to-peer.
Yeah, and in a way. And then, I went down and did the shooting, the official statements with St. Louis County. I got to listen to all the audio, and then gave my formal statement. Everything was good. We were cleared,
How quick were you cleared?
Fast. I don't remember how long I was off. I ended up taking some days off. I had to use my own PTO.
Really?
Yeah. But
how long were you actually off? Like how many days from your shooting, you worked the night after? How many days did you actually get off?
I think I took off like 2, and then I was off the weekend, and then maybe the next week I was back.
So like 5, 6 days maybe?
Yeah. Give or take. It might have been a little bit longer because I had to do a shooting review board within the department where basically I type up the events that occurred, and then I go in front of the review board within the department. And that was a whole debacle in itself. My sergeant, who wasn't even there, it was a big conference table.
Talk about a way to create a lot of animosity between the dudes that work at your department is have a bunch of guys Monday morning quarterback a dude who just went through.
That have never done it.
Yeah. Talk about a good way to create a boatload of animosity between your dudes.
Well, so my sergeant, who was off that night, I had to come in for the shooting review board, and he said to the captain at the time, he said, I want to sit on the same side of the table as him because he's basically going in front of a firing squad. They're going to fire questions at him about the decisions he made for policy violation.
Why would they? That is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in my life.
He said, I want to sit with him on his side so he knows he's got support. And the captain told him, no, if this is the worst thing he ever has to go through, then he'll be fine. So...
Whoa, dude.
They got into a screaming match. And I didn't know any of this occurred till after the fact. But then I go in and I sit in this review board, and the sergeant that had asked me how I was doing the morning after, he was kind of running the review board. And I had typed up a memo of everything that had occurred the night, the actions, everything leading up to it. And it was very, very quick. Would you do anything different? Would you, all this? And no. Like, I did what I had to do. Like, I was there to protect myself and the other officers on scene. It was very, very straightforward. And I was cleared immediately. Like I said, I caught paper, and then I caught good paper later on.
Yeah.
So it was frustrating, but and then St. Louis County had my gun back to me within like 3 or 4 days. Like, they're super fast. They take it down.
It took forever.
You go to the front of the list. They test fire it, and then they get it back to you right away. They don't hang on to it for any reason unless there's something weird about the case.
Yeah.
But no, I had it back real fast, and then I hit the street.
What'd you think about going back to work that quickly? Like, was there any part of you that was like, man? Because I remember my first shift back, my senses were heightened. You know what I mean? I was far more anxious than if it was some normal shift that I was going back to. Did you experience that at all?
I don't know. It feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
And I've had so many things happen since then. Like, that one just kind of gets blocked out. Like, I don't even really think about that one anymore because it seems like it was forever ago.
Yeah.
That was my first case of a critical incident debrief. They called in the critical incident debrief team.
St. Louis counties or
the St. Louis regional one, the one that I'm on.
Oh,
I'm on it now.
SISM.
Yeah. So they came in and did a critical incident debrief for everybody that was involved. And that was my first taste of what that was.
Yeah.
And that was hugely beneficial for me because I was able to piece together the blank spots from what this officer saw and then what this guy saw from this vantage point to what I saw. And it was really good. It was, and it wasn't that we're doing this because we think you're soft or you can't handle this or we're going to talk about feelings or it's just this is what your body's going to go through. This is how you're going to process it.
That's very much what we try to do with 1078, because I don't think cops are soft, and I don't think cops want. I don't know a single cop that wants to be a victim.
No, but I think the old stigma that we're trying to get away from is this is what you signed out for, suck it up and deal with it. Because ultimately,
for sure,
when I do these debriefs, if it's like a bucket filling up. Mm-hmm. If you don't empty it on your own in some form or fashion, whether that's through counseling, therapy, a peer group or something, it's going to overflow and you're not going to be able to control it when it does. Yeah. So that's where we try to get in there and just be like, look, this is all stuff everybody knows as a cop. We just want to make you guys self-aware. Yeah. Just a reminder. It's not that you can't handle the stressors of the job. It's not that you can't process this. It's just we focus so much on taking care of the civilian community. Yeah. We forget about ourselves a lot of times. Yeah,
and I think just finding that happy medium is the key. You're not a victim, right? But the idea that you signed up for this, so suck it up, you can't have any feelings or any thoughts towards it. Right. Is like, that's also equally as toxic. So there's a middle ground there of, you're a police officer. Yeah, you did, enter a career where this may happen to you. Right. It doesn't make you incapable of handling it. It doesn't mean your career's over. Let's just give you some good coping mechanisms to ensure that you're going to come back the same cop that you left. Yeah, and our normal is very different from the civilian normal. Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's just, we have to remind people of that sometimes to understand that, hey, it's okay if this bothers you. It doesn't make you you're not a sissy, dude. Or like you can't handle this. It's just something you got to work through. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've used try to find the analogies to use to make the most sense, but like it would bother me more if a dude was like, I had no feelings towards it. It didn't bother me at all. It was like I would start to question it more. I would be more nervous if they're like, I have zero feelings towards it. And I know some guys have very little feelings towards it, but you have something. But most of those guys are the ones that need it most. Yeah. They say that because they think that's what they're supposed to say. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's when I get more nervous. When you get them in a room and you start talking and you're like, hey, man, we don't need you to tell us your feelings. Just tell us what you saw. And then things start to come to the surface. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of it, they're like, man, I didn't realize that this is what this was. Mm-hmm. So it's beneficial. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel on this. We're just trying to make sure people are aware that there's going to be things that are out of their control. And that's the worst thing that we deal with is when we don't have control. By nature in our job, we're in control. That's why the investigation got me so bad, man. When we lose control, zero control. That's when we panic. Yeah. And then, a lot of people are afraid to go talk to somebody, a counselor or a therapist. But what do you do when your car's broken? If you're not a mechanic, you go to a mechanic. Yeah, well, you blow your knee out, you go to the doctor. Right. If something's wrong mentally, you're struggling with something, go to the person that's got the skill set that can help you out. It doesn't mean you can't be fixed or you're broken beyond repair or whatever, but you got to figure out how to fix that so it doesn't manifest somewhere else in your life and your relationships or whatever. At Woodson, did you have access to like any resources other than like EAP or something like that? Obviously, they had EAP. I didn't utilize it. Nobody does, really. And I think the big problem there's a purpose for that. But I think it's gotten better, but I think a lot of the EAPs, you're calling people that don't know what we do on a day-to-day basis, and that's the problem. Culturally competent counselors. Yeah. So it's the only way to go. It's gotten better. I mean, historically, the fire departments and the fire districts are way better at this than we are. They've been doing it for years, dude. And when they go through something traumatic, they have the ability to take a truck out of service and somebody fills in. Mm-hmm. If 3 or 4 of you guys run a call that's traumatic, we can't operate with just... You can't take 3 or 4 guys out of service. Mm-hmm. And come back to the station and have a pot of coffee and talk about it. Yeah. It doesn't, you go to the next motor vehicle accident or the next disturbance or whatever it may be. Yeah. Like you don't even get time to process it between calls. So there's that whole side of it. But then there's also, the guys that have families, whether it's spouses or girlfriends or kids or parents, there's a secondary trauma that comes with that. Yeah. They all worry about us, but
they don't know what to do for us when we go through stuff like that. So it's just making sure these guys know that there's stuff out there. We're not forcing anything on them. It's just there if you need it, and we will be there to help however that may be.
Yeah.
We don't, our team doesn't, we're called out by request. That's how we get activated. That's it. We don't petition for them to use us as opposed to anybody else or anything like that. It's just, hey, we're here if you need us. Mm-hmm. And some departments choose to and some don't. And that's okay.
We do for most stuff now.
Yeah. There's a lot of departments that do, and they're better about it than other departments. And I think it's just people are afraid.
I think you may have been at mine.
I did yours, yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, because of the stuff I've been through, I pretty much do all of the officer-involved shootings in the St. Louis region. Just that's what I.
Yeah, it's a lived experience, man.
Well, and it's. I think where it comes into play is that I can go into a room and I can relate.
Yeah, for sure.
Ways. And I'm not afraid to put it on the table. Like, hey, this is what I experienced through mine.
Yeah, there's a level of vulnerability that's you have to have in order to get vulnerability from other people.
Sure.
You know what I mean? If I walk into the room and I'm not honest about anything that happened with my shooting and I just like act like nothing bothered me, well, then the dude's going to follow that exact same suit. He's going to say, well, no, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I'm fine, man. Nothing bothered me. I'm okay. It's like you're never going to get to people that way.
Sure.
And that's what this whole podcast is about. That's why I asked you to come on. That's why I have all these guys that went through shootings is like, all right, these are lived experiences of dudes that are legit. They're legit policemen. A lot of them have done extraordinarily courageous things throughout their career, and they struggle with all these things. So any young cop that comes and looks at the podcast and wonders, hey, man, I just went on this call and I'm bothered by it. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, all these dudes that I look up to, all these guys that have been through it, they lived these experiences. In your case, you've been through 4 officer-involved shootings, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, they can look at that and be like, oh, well, it doesn't make Pat any weaker because he says that he had these things. Human. Yeah, it makes you human, and that's the whole point. And that's the hope, is that through the podcast and through 1078, that guys will see like, hey, man, we're all just people. We're all just trying to make it to tomorrow, right. And I want to make it to tomorrow healthy and happy and with my family intact and with a wife that likes me. Because like you said, the bucket analogy, it's going to spill out somewhere else. And unfortunately, a lot of times it spills out on the people that we like the most.
Correct. It'll damage relationships if you don't manage it and take care of it.
100%, dude.
So
we're talking about resources, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't use EAP. One of the counselors that is in the area now was actually on the team at the time, so he did my debrief, Craig.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he had been through one, and then so he actually came out and did my debrief. Really? And then that's where I kind of took an interest in it, but I didn't get on the team for a couple years.
Did you start seeing him after that first one, or no?
No. I knew who he was. We had talked a little bit, but I never really actually officially went and saw him. Mm-hmm. I don't even recall having to do a fit for duty psych eval to come back. Like, it was pretty.
They're silly anyways.
It was just they were checking boxes for policy, but the policies weren't all there.
Yeah.
For me or for them. So I was mishandled in a lot of ways. I'm not upset about it. I just wanted to make sure it was better for the next guy. That the next guy was taken care of different and better than me.
Yeah.
And I didn't leave because of that. I stayed there for several years after that. And I had a great career there. Unfortunately, I was in Ferguson when it kicked off. I mean, I spent a lot of time up there. And
it had to be pretty difficult because it was really shortly after your shooting.
Yeah, so mine was February and that was August.
Because that was a difficult thing for dudes that didn't just go through a shooting to go watch and deal with. And, dude, the radio traffic down there was so hard to listen. The radio traffic was difficult to hear.
Yeah, we were...
Guys screaming for help.
So I was there the day that it happened. I got called in and was dispatched up to Ferguson because the crowd was just getting big, fast. I remember standing at West Florissant and Canfield. I was a little bit north of Canfield, right in front of where Quick Trip had used to be. And I was standing there with County TAC, and they weren't all suited up. They were just in their patrol uniforms. And we were standing in the middle of the road, and I was talking to one of I think he was a sergeant at the time. And I was like, man, this has got a weird feel to this. Like, something's off. Like, where are all these people coming from? And they were just pouring in. And then we moved the line up to, we actually stood on a riot line at Canfield, but just east of West Florissant. We were in Red's Barbecue parking lot. And the crowd just got, as night got closer and closer, the crowd just got so much bigger. And then, you hear rounds going off in the distance and a lot of things happened. And that was also kind of like a blur. Like, there was so much going on, and we were pulled in so many different directions. Because St. Louis County hadn't even processed the scene yet when I was there. They were still trying to get everything secured and process it and do what they needed to do to do an effective investigation.
I think the thing that blows my mind the most is, like, Ferguson's a nice area. Like, there are parts of Ferguson that are not very nice, but there's parts everywhere that are not very nice.
Sure.
But in general, like, if you ask somebody from a different state, you went to somebody in New York right now, and you said, what is Ferguson? They'd be like, oh, it's an inner city, really impoverished. It's not. Yeah. It's a nice area. Like,
there's still some very nice parts of it. I mean, that's like a lot of places up there, Spanish Lake, Bell Fountain. There's really nice homes tucked away in that community. That
U-City.
It's people have lived there their whole lives. And it's got a bad rap, unfortunately. But, I mean, to see the chaos that came was just crazy. I spent several weeks up there. Every shift, we'd come in and go straight to Ferguson. Woodson was, I think, 6 miles from there. So we were right down the highway. So we spent a lot of time up there. And
how disheartening was it? That's what I found myself being the most upset about. It's just like, how did this happen?
The frustrating part for us was that we were standing on a riot line, and we were told to not do anything. Do not engage. Why are we here? I mean, they were looting right in front of us, and we were told to not engage. What? Then what are we here for? Like, so, and there was things that were being discussed that I'm not privy to, but there was a struggle for control, whether it was going to be the county in control or the state in control, and ultimately the state took control, and then things got really weird. The county, when the chief had
it wasn't nearly as bad.
He was like, do your job. Do your job.
Yeah, what was that guy's name? Colonel Johnson or something?
Ron Johnson.
Yeah.
He was the troop captain at the time.
Or captain.
And then he took over. And I understood the angle that he took, but he cut our knees out from underneath us. And
I understand that angle when people aren't smashing windows and destroying businesses.
It didn't allow us to
lighting police cars on fire.
Correct. Well, and a lot of it came after the verdict. Yeah. I mean, there was looting and Quick Trip was burned down on the initial, but then I was out when the verdict was released. I had back surgery, so I was out, and I was out of the state even when
I was out there, but not in the capacity of a policeman.
Yeah, and they
like a uniform guy.
They once the verdict was released was when it just went nuts. So I wasn't there for that, so I don't really know what it was like to be on the ground up there.
It does kind of seem like a blur, to be 100% honest. I'm like trying to think back to it. And it's like
it was the same thing every night. It
seemed like just a mess, man.
You just go up there and you stand around for 16 hours and wait until you're told to do something or nothing.
Yeah. It's a crazy time.
Yeah. And then you guys get shot at.
That summer changed law enforcement for probably the next 15 years. like in 15 years, we'll still be dealing with side effects of Ferguson.
Yeah, the pendulum has swung back towards our favor.
I think so too.
In a lot of ways. But it's still
Here's
not
the
all
really
the way
weird thing. So when I was up at K9 school with Loki, I talked to some guys that are from different parts of the country, like Minnesota, like all over the place. And they're getting what we got with Ferguson, like that was like 3 years ago. But then it was like it took that long to move across. Like here, we're like the epicenter of it. And it seems like we've kind of had these issues. There's been this weird dynamic. And then the communities have kind of come together and a new set of rules have been established. And now we're living by these new set of rules, right? And everything has calmed down a little bit. And there, it's just now kicking off. It's like at least here, like we were the epicenter for it. So now we don't have to.
Usually we're the last ones to get anything.
Yeah. It starts on the east to the west coast and works its way in. We were the first one to get
this, and then it's working its way out. But yeah, it was just a weird. I mean, you know, like I said earlier, my dad's good friend that was a city cop. He had never been through anything like that, and he was a cop in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And so he's calling me saying, what's going on? What's it like? I can't even imagine. And I was like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's unfortunate because two families' lives were destroyed. You know, on very different sides of the spectrum, but they were both destroyed. And now all of this backlash for what? You know, we've destroyed a community for nothing really. So it was unfortunate.
Sorry to interrupt the episode, but we got some big exciting things happening with 1078. As you guys know, we sell merch, and that's been going pretty well. We decided to drop 2 more t-shirts, one of which I think you guys will think is hilarious. Head over to the website, www.1078project.com. Click the merch button. It will take you to our merch store where you can purchase a shirt. Just so you guys know, all the proceeds from those shirts, all the profits from those shirts are getting donated back to the nonprofit, and it's a way for us to continue to do the work that we have been doing. Also, we have big news as well. We're having a trivia night. It's on 9/20. If you're looking to attend the trivia night, again, go to the website, www.1078project.com. Go to the events tab, and you can register. All the information that you'll need is there. Guys, this is a really big deal to us. This is the way that we fund all of our operations. If you're a business, you're looking to sponsor the trivia night, again, you can reach out to us, or you can go to the website, to the event tab. All of our contact information will be on there. Hit us up. We'd love to have your support. We've also loved to have you guys at the trivia night. I'll stop talking so we can get back to the episode. Weird times, dude.
Yeah, and it definitely had its effect on patrol. You know, the Ferguson effect that people say doesn't exist. It does.
Exists for sure.
People are afraid to go out and be policemen sometimes, and it's hard to get out of that funk. I know where I was at, like 6 miles down the road, like every time we stopped a car after that, you pulled me over because of this. Yeah. Come on, man. You're doing 80 down the highway. I have no idea what race you are when you're doing 80 down the highway at 2 in the morning.
Or you stop me because I'm black. It's like, no, your plates expired 1.5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of things. Like, that was a constant battle. But
why are we doing it? Why are we having this argument?
Yeah.
This is a stupid argument.
Yeah, and what I learned real quick up there was creating a dialogue with a lot of these people was what needed to happen, and that worked for me. You know, I had people say, "Oh, all you white cops are racist." Have you met every white cop? How can you make a generalized statement like that? You can't. So let's have a real conversation.
Yeah.
You've had some bad experiences, clearly, but let's make sure this experience is not a bad one.
Yeah.
And that worked for me. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but I was able to create some dialogue, and then I would see some of those people because they lived in the general area. And so I would have other interactions with them, and it was good interactions. Like, he's cool. He's fine. He's not one of them, whatever that, you know, like, just, okay, I'm just here to do my job, man. Just leave it at that. But it's sucked it's created a huge problem for St. Louis County overall.
This whole region, man, really, because it just bled out, you know, it's just like bled out to every little area. And
well, and then, you know, now you look at St. Louis City, all the problems they've had, and they have, you know, they're down like 300 or 400 officers.
Yeah, the guys I talked to that work at the city or worked at the city said it's a lot higher than that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They got dudes working
it's way worse
entire zones by themselves.
Projected to be.
And zones that aren't filled, and which is sad, but unfortunately it'll probably only get worse before it gets any better there. That whole idea of having the state take it over may not be the worst idea in the world. Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't know enough about the city. I never had any interest to work down there, so I don't know what that looks like moving forward for them. I feel bad for those guys. They're
So, dude, some of the best cops that I work with are former city cops. They're fantastic guys, great cops, super intelligent, and every single one of them has the exact same story there. Is I got burnt out.
Yeah.
Come in, there's 14 calls pending. Why do I want to handle 14 calls? Like, I work nonstop until I go home. There's no support. There's no backing.
Yep.
Or second guessed and it's like, why would you ever want to work there?
Right.
You know, like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sad. Some of the best dudes I know, man. How much longer did you spend in Woodson?
So I left there in 2016. There's some turmoil in the department, and there was a power struggle. And it was really unknown who was going to be the chief. And depending on which way it went,
going to make a big difference.
It was going to be real bad or real good, and for everybody collectively.
Yeah.
So I told my wife, I said, I'm going to make one more move, and I'm going to go out west, and wherever I land is where I land. So I applied at County O'Fallon. I tried to go back to O'Fallon, but there was a certain regime that was there that wasn't having me come back, which I don't know why
they're all gone, dude.
I know, but that was a long time ago. But I had people fighting for me to come back to O'Fallon, and certain people that aren't there anymore, like, no, we're not hiring him back.
Interesting.
Whatever. But it worked out all in my favor. But I tested at Lake, got hired on, and we've gone through some changes. Our command staff's getting ready to turn over from attrition and some retirements. But I mean, it's I've been there since the summer of 16.
Let's be honest here. When you decided you're going to go out there, were you thinking, I'm going to move out west, it's going to be sleepy? And
I had no interest in coasting, retired on duty. Like I'm not that way. My best friend in the academy, his dad was the chief. I knew about Lake, and I knew everything was moving west. So I thought, get out there, get settled, and then crime's going to work its way west. It's done it. Mm-hmm. They have crime, but it's just a different
kinds.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was, I knew it was going to be different, and I struggled for the first 10 months for sure. Maybe even the first year. I told my wife, I was like, I can't do this. I got to go back on the other side of the river. Like, this is terrible. I can't do it.
What year did you move out, did you say?
I was 16, okay. I think, summer of 16. And I told my wife, I was like, I can't. I got to go back. And she's like, just ride it out. Just give it time. And fortunately, she's way smarter than me in that regard and just told me to have patience. And I did. And when I got hired, they said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to work a dog.
Was it just the pace that
Yeah, the pace was super slow. Call volume was not really there.
Yeah.
The hot calls weren't there.
Mm-hmm. Little did you know, right around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah. Little did they know.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I got hired, the question on the oral board is, what do you want to do? I said, I want to work a dog. We don't have a dog. I said, okay, you will. I mean, I was a little arrogant about it. But I knew the need and I knew what they bring to the table. So I got settled in, and then I started working on the dog program.
I remember you were working on it even when I had my first dog, I think.
So, you know, I was told no a lot about the dog stuff. And then I think I broke the captain into where he just caved. He would probably tell you different, but, you know, it was, we're not paying for it. You gotta fund it. Okay. So I go and I get JDH came through, and, you know, Adam and Melinda did a huge job for me. So they guaranteed me.
I went to high school with Justin?
I did not.
Yeah. Went to high school with him. We hung out in the same group and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think he was like 2 years younger than me, probably.
Really?
Maybe a year. Either a year or 2 years younger than me. Yeah, but we hung out the same group, seen him all the time.
Wow. Well, the world is small.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, yeah, we'll fund the dog. We'll fund all the training, all the equipment, all of that. So I went to the captain and I said, hey, I got the dog paid for. Okay, what about the car? I don't know. Aren't you guys going to buy the car? Nope. Shit. So I had to figure out a way to get a car. So I had a good friend when I worked in Woodson that I became friends with. He was a trooper. He was just starting to get into interdiction pretty heavy, and he was on an interdiction stop and got hit and ended his career.
Really?
But I had started to kind of get into it a little bit. Out here, the interstate's a little different than over there. The volume is just different. So I had started to kind of look into it a little bit out here and started to play with it a little bit. And talking to him, I said, I got this dog program funded. I don't have a car. And you know, he'd been hit by a semi truck, his car,
Holy
him and his
cow.
sergeant. And so he got some sort of settlement. I don't know what, but enough that he doesn't have to work anymore. And he's still dealing with some of the aftermath of that, some injuries. But he said, I'll buy the car. So he said, what do you need? I said, I don't know. Let me go look at some different things. So I looked into Missouri State Highway Patrols, like when they cycle their cars out. There was a long waiting list. Wasn't realistic. Then I'd heard about Kansas State Highway Patrol. So I reached out to their fleet guy and said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you have any K9 cars? And he said, I've got a Charger. And I said, what's it cost? And he told me. And so I went back to my buddy that said we would cover it. And he goes, that's fine. I'll write a check. How do you want to do it? I said, I don't know. I got to have another conversation. So I went to the captain and I said, okay, I got the car done. This was like a week or two. And he's like, God, you work fast. And I was like, I told you this is what I want to do. And he's like, all right, let me talk to Chief. So we talked to Chief, and Chief said, you got it all funded. I said, yep, everything. The city doesn't have to come out of pocket for anything other than food and, you know, the maintenance. And so I put up a proposal for what that would cost a year. And they said, okay. So we went out and got the car, ordered up the dog, and then waited. And in the meantime, I had gone out to some of the vet that we have in Lake, and I went to one of the pet supply chains, and they adopted us. And so they donate our food, donate our vet care. So the city really has almost zero operating cost. And then I said, well, we're not doing any of that from the city's end. What about health insurance for the dogs? So the city agreed and pays health insurance on the dogs. We now have two, but they pay monthly health insurance on the dogs, which in this line of work, if one of them gets injured significantly, it pays for itself immediately. So that's where it started. My dog will be 5 in August.
It's be 5 already?
Mm-hmm. I've had him 4 years, a little less than 4.
How's he 5 already?
But,
It seems so much quicker than that. He's a shepherd too, so it's like halfway through his career probably.
Yeah. I mean, he's still pretty full of energy.
But that's how Odin was until the end, man. Once the hips and everything just start.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why we run Chargers, because I didn't want the SUV for the height of jumping up and jumping down and the wear and tear on them, and just trying to do the things that other places had run into issues with, or I did a lot of reading on we have SUVs because it's more space, more room for things, but my dog has hip issues at 4 because he's jumping in and out of a Tahoe. So I was like, well, we can alleviate that with a lower to the ground car, and then our pursuit policy is a little different, and we chase cars and to some degree, and then we have the task force now, and so we're running on that every night. So Ford Explorers don't get out of their own way, and Tahoes are expensive, and so I was looking at the most bang for the buck. And so the city and the department and everybody's behind it. I had my dog 10 months, and Chief came to me one day and said, get another one. So we went from none in the history of the department to 2 within 2 years. And now, the second one was funded by JDH as well. So the county as a whole has more dogs in it now than it's ever had.
Definitely.
Which
it used to just be us, man.
It kind of sucks.
It'd be great because we get the work from everywhere.
It
We'd
sucks
be doing tracks every single night. We would do building searches every single night, and now it's like
nobody gets any work because there's so many dogs.
There's so many dogs working.
I think everybody realizes the value in them, whether it's from a PR standpoint or it's from a working side.
It's both, man.
It is. It is. Everybody's got a therapy dog or a.
Don't you guys have a therapy dog now too?
We do. I guess
we don't have one.
I shouldn't count him out, but as far as patrol dogs go, we have 2.
We don't have a therapy dog.
You probably have one soon, I'm sure. Everybody else has got one.
I don't think they want it.
Oh, I don't know.
I really don't. I don't think they want it. There's an organization that wanted to donate one.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll give it to another department or something. I don't know. But
yeah, I know county's got one. I think they're getting a second one. So
PA's office has one. You guys have one.
St. Charles City's got one.
City has one, yeah. That's what I thought St. Peter's dog program was going to be for a while, but now they're getting legit patrol dogs, which is cool.
They're getting 2 to start, I think, and then 2 more in the next year or 2 after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all, it's great other than it's not a lot of work for all of us, but that's all right. I'll take it.
It is what it is, man.
Yeah. So
bad guys are getting caught. That's all that matters.
Yeah. We got that up and running. I went to school in January of 21, I think. Yeah. I got him in December, and I went to school in January of 21. And then February of 21, I came back, and the task force started. So we were assigned to the task force immediately. So we run on that every night that it operates, and that's been huge for him. For me, too, learning handling side, the exposure, the environmentals, all the stuff that he gets to do, and the things that I get to learn running him. It's great, because the reality is we're not going to get that kind of work in Lake on a regular basis. So he gets a lot more work that way.
Yeah.
And then April of 21 was when I had my second shooting.
This is the one that I don't think I know that much about. Is it a domestic thing or something? This
is the one that St. Peter's officer was shot in traffic stop.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm getting them out of order. There's too many of them.
Yeah. I think, pretty sure it was April.
It was probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, St. Peter's officer gets shot in the leg on a traffic stop over off Mid Rivers, I think. And they put out a vehicle description, pretty generic, nothing really crazy. But that day was weird for me. I had chased a car in the morning, and it was assault on LEO. It ran westbound from state, turned around in Warren County.
I was about to say, nobody runs westbound.
Yeah. It tried to run over a Warren County deputy when he got off the highway, came back east. I picked it up at the boulevard, chased it into St. Charles City, and took the guy into custody. No big deal. All of that, I say, because I had to do all the paperwork on it before I ended my shift that day. That's part of our policy, is if you get in a pursuit, you got to have all the paperwork turned in by the end of shift. So my position, I have a whole lot of autonomy. I get to make my schedule, and I report to my captain, and he gives me a lot of freedoms. So he doesn't really, he cares, but he's like, just do your job. Don't get me in trouble. Don't abuse overtime. Show up, do what you're supposed to do. So I had that in the morning. I had started the paperwork, and we were running calls all day, and I had to leave to go pick up my daughter from a track meet in Wentzville. And in the meantime, this St. Peter's guy had been shot in the leg, and he was okay. I think it was like a through and through. It was pretty minor injuries in the grand scheme of things. And so everybody was looking for it. And they knew that it had frequent in Wentzville. Well, I was in Wentzville, and I had to pick up my daughter, and then I had to take her home, which is just west of Wentzville. And one of our guys had ended his shift. It was like 6-ish. And he was driving home. He lives up in Lincoln County. And he was in his personal vehicle with his radio, but no gun. And he calls out on the radio, "Can I have the plate of the suspect vehicle from the shooting?" And I'd just gotten to my house, and I'm monitoring everything throughout the day, and dropped my daughter off and said, "Hey, I'll be back in a little bit. I got to go back to the station and finish this paperwork up, and then I'll be home." My wife was on a shift at the fire department. So our guy calls out, "What's the plate?" And he says, "I'm behind the vehicle." And I knew about where he was. And so where he was at in relation to my house was like 4 or 5 miles. I was going to be the closest person to him. So I got on the radio. I said to the sergeant, I said, "Hey, I'm like 4 or 5 miles out. Can I go?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's fine." I was going anyways. I was just being polite. But so I take off up there. And he was able to do some surveillance because he was in his personal vehicle and just kind of watch the movements of this guy. He pulls into a driveway, goes in the house, and comes out, and he's loading the car with long guns. Couldn't make out what he had, but he knew he was loading long guns in. So he gets on the radio and he said, "Hey, he's loading the car up with some long guns." So at that point, he was on one end of the street. I was on the other end. I got out, got my rifle, kind of situated my rifle. I knew this was going to end bad. He'd already shot one cop, unprovoked. Like, there was no rhyme or reason. I think the St. Peter's guy was basically just walking up to the car to make contact. He opened the door, leaned out, and fired a round. That was it, and then drove off. So I knew this was gonna go weird. The hair on the back of your neck stands up. It just didn't feel right. So I get my rifle, I set it up, and then he backs out of the driveway, and he pulls out towards me. He has to go past me for the exit. So as he gets close, his windows were down. I yell out some commands, and he drives right by me. He kind of rolls over in the front seat away from me like he thought I was going to shoot into the car as he was driving. We were in a neighborhood. It was nice out, 60, 70 degrees. People are walking around. Like, there's no way I was going to reasonably be able to shoot into this vehicle as he's driving.
Yeah.
And we'd lost sight of him between the shooting of the St. Peter's guy and now this. So I didn't have any cause to do that. So I jump back in the car, and it turns into a pursuit. So there was a Troy officer that was in an unmarked, I think it was unmarked, I don't remember, but he was in a Charger down the street with our guy. So he comes up the street as I'm making my U-turn. So now he's in front of me, and then we get to the end of the neighborhood. Suspect pulls out. and a Lincoln County deputy pulls in behind him. So it's suspect, Lincoln County, Troy, then me. And we're on a 2-lane back road, farming road, pretty sparsely populated. And
you're out next to my house. I live like really close to where all this started.
Okay. So he's not speeding. He's just driving. He's like 40, 45 miles an hour, but he's kind of weaving. And I thought that was weird. Like, why are you weaving all over the place? What are you doing?
Loading.
Well, that's what we figured out after the fact. We caught him off guard. He wasn't ready. So we think he was loading as he was driving. So he gets, I guess he got enough loaded. And we did this pursuit for a short period of time and a couple miles, and then he just stops. And so he stops kind of in the middle of the road. The Lincoln County deputy stops in the oncoming lane. Well, I put my car behind his, but we're about, 30, 40 yards behind him. And I was trying to use his car for cover because I had the dog. And I wasn't going to deploy him, but I needed him to have some sort of cover. And then the Troy car stops next to me. And immediately he gets out and he starts firing. And it's a big boy gun. I found out later it was an SKS. He got off 25 or 28 rounds pretty quick. He was just kind of firing from the hip. So I called out, shots fired. He had pinned down the deputy behind his car because he didn't have anywhere to go. It was open field on either side. And so he pinned him down behind the car, and he's doing his best to return fire. He's got a pistol, but he's still 30 or 40 yards out, and he's just turning and kind of firing at him just to kind of keep him away and at bay. So I get out with the rifle, and I go around the back of my car and around the back of Troy's car, and the suspect had turned to get back into his car to grab another long gun, and he it was weird. I'll never forget. He had like a off-white or white T-shirt, and it was a dark interior car. So he was standing in the V of the door,
stood out,
and it was like a silhouette.
Yeah,
that, at the range, like a white backed. It was like putting a T-shirt on a target board. That's what it reminded me of, because I couldn't make out. I was too far out to make out facial features.
It's so weird
or
that you say that, because even during mine, it seemed that way too.
Yeah.
Like I can't actually remember exactly what my guy was wearing, to be 100% honest, but at one point it was almost like my brain just turned him into a silhouette. Mm-hmm. It's weird.
Yeah, I couldn't make out a facial feature. I couldn't tell you to this day, how long his hair was, or I think he was wearing jeans, but it seemed like a really long T-shirt and like the oversized ones. Mm-hmm. And so he had pulled out another long gun, and at that point, there was a lull where he was transitioning. And I was probably 60, 70, 80 yards out. And I fired 5 rounds. And my first round, I skipped it as I was coming up on him. And I hit his ankle by just sheer luck. Hit his ankle. And then...
He meant to do it. Everybody.
I'm not that good. And then I kind of worked my way up. You could see the progression. And then I shot him 4 more times. And then he went down, and then it was chaos after that. I mean, everybody ran up there, and tactics were out the window. Everybody wanted to render aid, and it was just like a mad dash to the suspect.
It's the guy who just tried to shoot you.
Yeah. I mean, he shot up Lincoln County's car. Somehow he didn't shoot up my car. My dog was good. He was using a big gun. We were outgunned for sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the second gun was, but it was a hunting rifle. So, I mean, he had more firepower and bigger calibers than we had. Had he any discipline,
could have been a bad day.
It would have been bad. But so that was during SWAT week. That was on a Thursday because they were doing their barbecue.
Yeah, Montana called me.
And the the captain was there, and I think he had just made his plate from the barbecue. And I called out on the radio. I think they were listening to it down there because the air unit.
I forgot your captain's on.
Yeah, the air unit was down there for their barbecue, and they had to take off to come help. So somebody clicked on a radio, and they were monitoring. And I got on the radio and said, "Shots fired. Send me a supervisor. I've discharged my department rifle, whatever." And Captain didn't get to eat his food. He was not real thrilled about that. And he's not real versed in Lincoln County, so he's trying to drive up there, and he has no idea where he's going. And we're kind of off the beaten path.
Yeah, you're definitely off the beaten path. It's like directly between Wentzville and Lincoln County, right? Where it actually happened.
Yeah, so it's it runs parallel with 61, but it's west of 61 by a couple miles. And so he's trying to get there, and his phone's ringing, and he's trying to put GPS in, but he can't because the phone's ringing. And so he finally just calls me, and he says, "Where are you? How do I get to you?" And so I had to tell him, I had to walk him in, and he gets there, and he goes, Chief's on his way. I'll be honest with you. We haven't had one of these in a long time, and policies have changed. And we'll get through this. Just you did everything right. He was trying to reassure me as best he could without still being an administrator and having to do the thing. And I said, "That's fine. I'll help you. I've been through this before." And I was trying to make a joke, and I don't think it really went over the way it did in my head. But he kind of grinned, and then he was like, "Okay." And then we did the rest of the process. But
how much smoother did that one go compared to the Woodson ones?
That one, they were good. So state came in and did the investigation on that.
I think they do most of Lincoln counties.
Probably.
I think they do. Some of the guys that we helped from the one where the barn burned down.
Yeah.
They did theirs too. So I think they do most of Lincoln's.
State does a good job. They just do a little different. They do it a little bit different than anybody else.
Their state, they got to be a little different.
Yeah, I mean, it's their reports read a little different. They read more like a traffic crash than a shooting or whatever. But it wasn't bad. It was just they were a little slower. They have a smaller team, so it. But they were great. Like I don't have any complaints other than it took them a little while to get my rifle back to me.
It took them forever to get mine back, dude.
Yeah, so that was April. Rifle was gone. They cleared me pretty quick.
How long were you off?
So I think at the time, my agency did a parallel investigation for policy.
Like an internal investigation?
Yeah,
ours does that too.
And they did it. They knew right away as soon as they seen video, and because we had body cams and dash cams and everything was captured. So it was very, as much as people don't like body cams and dash cams.
No, dude, they've
help. Cleared me immediately on anything I've been involved in. Even though it's unofficial, they've cleared me right away because they watch it and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be good. We just got to go through the motions at this point," which is a huge relief. That's huge for guys. Now, flip side is if you're wrong, you're wrong. So, it's not a bad thing that body cams and dash cams are around.
No, it's a good thing, I think.
It weeds out the guys that are doing stuff they shouldn't be.
Yeah, and it reminds you that you're a policeman and you have a certain standard that you have to hold yourself to. And when people say you did certain things that you didn't do, it's there.
Yeah, it's definitely cut down on complaints because as soon as they realize
we never get complaints anymore.
They realize that it's captured on camera. Oh yeah, no, never mind. So yeah, I mean it was a long night. This was like, I don't know, 6:30, 7 o'clock maybe when this happened. It was just getting dark. So, I called my wife and I said, "Hey," she answers the phone and she's at the firehouse. She's laughing, she's giggling. They're at dinner, doing fire department things, making casseroles or whatever, barbecue, whatever they're doing. And I said, "Hey, I need you to stop laughing for a second. And she's like, what? Why? I said, I just was in another shooting. I'm okay, but Peyton is at the house. I need you to go home. She doesn't know this happened. She's going to freak out if I'm not home because I told her that I was going to be home, and I don't want to call her and tell her over the phone and have her be home by herself. She's going to panic. And she's like, okay, well, I got to get somebody in, and then I'll be on my way. So I was up there for a while. A couple of our guys came up. They had to keep the car because it was in the crime scene. And I said, well, I got to take the dog. Like, you don't get to keep the dog with the car. So one of the guys that came up, he drove me back to the house to drop the dog off, and Chief followed us. And Chief came in, talked to my wife, and then I changed clothes, went to the station. They took pictures of me at the scene in my uniform, and then I went and changed clothes, and Chief said, are you good going to the hospital to get checked out, do the drug test, do the breath test, do, you know, vitals, all that. I said, yeah, whatever we need to do, like, that's fine. So then I rode with Chief to the hospital. We went through all that, and then my car was released, and I grabbed my car. They sent up a guy to pick up my car. He drove it back to the station. I jumped in the car and drove home. It was probably 2 o'clock in the morning ish. Wife was still awake, obviously, and she a little freaked out because she didn't really know the story. Settled down once she heard the story. And then, you know, my daughter was a little frazzled. You know, unfortunately, her first question was, are you going to go to jail?
Oh, my God. See?
She's old enough now. I can't hide it from her.
The world we live in, man.
She's old enough, but that's her first question. So, and it's fair. I get it.
It's a good question.
She's old enough to understand. She didn't know about the first one for a long time. She was 6. She wouldn't have been able to she thought I caught bad guys in nets for the first couple of years of my job. Like, she didn't understand that, like, it was dangerous. She's like, you just run around and catch bad guys in a net. And I let her think that for as long as I could until she understood that it was way more serious than that. So, you know, I explained to her what happened, and I was very open and honest with her, and that made her feel better that I wasn't hiding anything from her. Doesn't make it any less scary, but
yeah.
she processes it and manages it well, and doesn't necessarily like it, but knows that it's something that's dealt with. So then I was off for, I don't know, a couple weeks, I guess, while they did the internal, and then I had to come in and give a formal statement to both the department and to state. And that was pretty uneventful, pretty straightforward.
Did you do a written one or verbal?
Nope, I've never done a written one. I don't take FOPs with me. I don't do anything wrong. I'm just telling a story, just like writing a police report. But I just put it in my own words. I don't type it. And I know there's people would argue with me and say I'm a fool for doing that, but if I haven't done anything wrong, what do I need to take an attorney with me for if I'm just telling the story of what happened? This guy's shooting at the police.
Yeah.
It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, obviously, I would recommend that if anybody goes through an officer-involved shooting, that they should have an attorney with them. Preference. But, you know, you've been through enough of them, I guess, if that's the outlook that you have. And
yeah, it's just and I get it. I won't tell anybody not to do it if that's what they want to do. By all means, do it. It's just, for me, it's like, I'm just telling you what happened. You already know what happened. I'm just telling you again.
Yeah.
And you got a guy shooting at me and everybody else on that scene, then we're justified.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely are.
So, did that, and then just waited. And
you said you were off for about 2 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. I had to go see. I was asked if I would go see Craig. I said, "Yeah, I'll go see whoever. If you want me to go see whoever, I'll go see whoever you want. I don't have anything to hide. I don't.
Are you talking about for like to go back to work?
For duty, yeah.
Okay.
Which is a lot of policy stuff.
There's very simple questions. It's not very in depth. It's kind of.
I don't have an issue. The way I look at it is, if I'm willing to go do that, then it opens the door for everybody else to go, oh, well, it's not that bad. Like, it's okay to go talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what we talk about, and that's okay. But to me, it's okay to go talk to somebody, whether it's your own choice or the department saying, hey, we'd like for you to go talk to somebody. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Don't make it anything.
Almost every department has that anyways, where you're going to be forced. It's mandatory that you go back and talk to somebody.
Right. But even if you choose to do it on your own after that, to follow up with that, that therapist or counselor, that's okay. That's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And trying to get that past that stigma, like we talked about earlier, like that's what people need to realize is okay to do.
Yeah, we don't have a normal job.
Right.
We don't do normal things.
Correct. So yeah, I did that. And then it was just waiting. And I came back.
I think that 2 to 3 week mark is probably a good 2.5 weeks, somewhere around there, maybe 3.
Yeah,
it's probably a good amount of time off. Too much time could be equally as difficult. Not enough time, you don't really have a lot of time to process it.
Yeah, and my department's really good. Like, if I went in and said, hey, I need more time, they would give me whatever I needed. My chief is a very big backer of mental health for us.
Yeah, I talked to him when I first started this.
He is all in on, if my guys aren't in the right frame of mind, what good are they doing on the street? They're not, their head's not in the game, then they're not helping the guys that are standing next to him. So he's all for it. He gives me so much freedom, and the captain so much freedom to go do the critical incident debriefs with the regional team all the time.
Do you think that's your version of like post-traumatic growth? It's like taking the things that you have went through in the past and using them to do something positive?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably in some form. I don't look at it that way, but yeah, it probably is. I don't run around. I mean, this is probably the most I've talked about this. I mean, people know the stories. People have asked. I don't have a problem talking about it. It's not like it's a dark place for me to go.
You don't avoid conversations about it, but you don't volunteer conversations about it.
Yeah, I don't run around introducing myself and saying, "Oh, by the way, this is what's happened to me."
Just want to let you know I have the record number of officer-involved shootings in St. Charles County.
I don't. I definitely don't do that. But yeah, I mean, if somebody's got legitimate questions, we'll talk about it. But then there's always the people that are like non-law enforcement, like, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? Oh, come on, man. I'm not answering these questions. Like,
I don't
find a different question.
I used to answer it until I went through one, and now I don't answer them anymore. It's like, you don't want me to tell you.
Truth,
you don't really want me to tell you what happened.
Even aside from that, most people don't want to know the real truth of the stuff that we see on a daily basis. They're not cut out for that.
I think that's why law enforcement mental health has taken such a backseat for so long. It's because cops are bad at saying the things that we go through, and society doesn't want to hear what we go through.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're so far behind the fire departments and all these other places, because we don't voice it, and society doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then our coping skills are a bottle of whiskey or
an extra girlfriend,
pills, or a woman on the side, or whatever your vice is, and then it spirals you out of control or down a deep dark path, and then you implode. You throw away a really good career potentially for something that you could have avoided completely.
100% right, dude.
So that was my motive when I got on the critical incident team, was like, I've seen guys throw their careers away over stuff that they could have dealt with and processed, and they didn't. They avoided it, and then So now we're in a spot where they're just in a bad way.
Yeah.
And they've lost a relationship with a kid, or they're divorced, or whatever it may be, however it manifested. But it's not where I want to see guys go.
Yeah,
it's
me either.
avoidable. So yeah, I mean, as far as that incident, the department was really good. Came back pretty quick.
What's up, guys? Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. If you can't tell, there's more from Pat, and here's a sneak peek from next week's episode.
Just shy of 3 months later, so that was April, so early July, we get a call for domestic, and I was working kind of a weird afternoon shift. And so we shoot over to where the victim's at, and she's hysterical and says that her husband strangled her, tried to kill her, told her she was going to die today. And he was at his house. He was at their house. So I told the corporal to stay and get a statement from her. I was going to go over to the house, and I got the lieutenant on the radio, who was on the negotiator team. And I said, hey, here's what we got. You want to meet me over here, and we'll formulate a plan as soon as the corporal's done talking to her and he gets here. So we're setting up at the house. At some point, she says, he's prior special forces, and he's got guns, and he's drunk and not afraid to use his guns. We don't know if he is or isn't any of those things. So we're going to treat him as such. And so the corporal leaves. He pulls onto the street of where we're staged, and we get another 911 call that he is now at the house where the wife is at.